Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to another provisionary love discussion. I'm so excited Parris is joining us today. Parris, well first, thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'm just gonna do a little bit of an introduction of you and who you've been in my life, and then I'm gonna let you take the floor. So Parris and I have been connected for some time now through interweavings of the online world. I think that's how I get connected to most people, is the online world, just interweavings of it. And oh my gosh, I'm trying to make this about like how I know you. And I'm like, there are just so many ways we were connected that I can't even really remember. So what I know and love about you and who you are is Parris is really just a brilliant mind, body, soul, and connection to God and connection to being a woman. And um, what I'm most inspired by about you, Parris, is like your willingness to see life at a deeper level through like all that you experience. And in doing so, you've been able to give back just a really like refreshing and maybe even at times confronting. I don't know if you've ever been told that before, but it like in a really powerful way, confronting acknowledgement of whoever might be listening to or receiving your message, because you've been willing to do that with yourself. And I know that comes from like years and years of your own beautiful life journey that's had its own ups and downs and yeah, as we all have. So without me being able to speak to you in a more like, or speak about you in a more formal way, just because I feel so deeply connected to you on like a heart and soul level, I do want to say that Parris is a really incredible teacher and writer and friend and mother. And so I'm so delighted to have you here and dive into what we'll say is like another realm of the provision of the feminine, as you are so incredibly in tune with the female body and its power in life. So that's what I have to share about you. And I would love to let you introduce yourself with the beautiful poem that we spoke about prior that I really love. And anything else you want to share before that?
Courtney, I almost like got up to get my box of tissues. I just love you so much. And it's been such a joy and a pleasure to walk alongside you and have our stories woven together, because you helped me to meet those deeper layers of being a woman and a friend and a daughter and a sister and a holy daughter too, more importantly. So it's like, oh, it feels so tender. Talk about two water signs.
Oh my gosh.
uh, and so anyways, all of that to say, it's such an honor to be able to sit and to share conversation and let that transmission ripple out into the ethers.
Yeah, I feel the same.
I like to, for anyone who's new to me, I like to refer to myself as a multidisciplinary artist of life. And I'm still learning more and more about who I am in all of those multifaceted areas. But most importantly, like I am a mother, I am a sister, I am a daughter, and that takes shape and form in so many different ways. And as such, the most special posture that I get to hold is also the one of just being a vessel of creation. And so with that being said too, like Courtney briefly touched on, I'm going to share a poem around the provision of being a woman and what it is that we really like get to experience in relationship with other women, which is so beautiful to share with you, Courtney, because I got to share this before it made its way out at all, like with you. And so this is also written to you and to all of the women that I've gotten to like be in relationship with. Men taught me how to be penetrated, reorganized, and adjusted. However, please make no mistake, it was the women who taught me how to orgasm. It was the women who sat and showed me the name of every part of my soul. It was the women who taught me how to receive my own touch first. It was the women who watched me trace and feel every mound, crevice, and smoothed out valley of my creation, and to fall in love with the reflection of the mirror before me in all ways. It was the women who held me as I cried rivers of tears and shook every lie and disbelief from my nervous system. It was the women who then watched me hold myself as those shakes became trembling and guttural cries of glee that transported me all the way to God. It was the women who taught me to hear the music that hums from the energy of creation, to find the pulse of my heart and the cadence of the Creator. In the grocery store, in the moonlight, in the laundry, in the car, at the sink, and to move my hips to the beat of that drum. It was the women who taught me how to get on my knees and surrender to Him. It was the women who taught me the pleasure and joy found in obedience. It was the women who taught me how to meet another eye to eye as we cleaned out the big hungry ghosts of the psyche so that those spaces could be filled with His love. It was the women who whispered, "You're okay, stay right here." And then how to wipe the sweet nectar of eternal bliss from my lips and say, "More, please, yes, more, please." Though it was the men who taught me how to take it, please make no mistake, it was the women who showed me the Garden of Eden first.
Oh my gosh, what a treat. Paris, it's so beautiful to get to hear you speak it and share it in the cadence and like touch of life that you had written to it. And this also feels really special because I love to take a piece of writing and read it because I find there's such a deeper yeah, like there's such a deeper transmission that occurs when we do, and I've never had someone do that yet, like on the channel or on any platforms that I've hosted. So you're the first, and I want to say thank you for offering that to me and to everyone. Um, the reason I wanted Paris to start with that, I obviously didn't even think about like we just talked about this like 10 minutes ago before we started. I hadn't thought about it, but the reason it came up was I'm so aware of like the dissonance I've had in my life to being a woman. And so I'm just sharing a little bit of like my experience and then gonna let you take the floor and what you started with there. That dissonance of like, it's like a disconnection from myself as a woman because it's so incredibly, it had been like, this is a little bit of story, but I have experienced the relating to myself as a woman in a very fearful way, like touch, intimacy, vulnerability, being seen. And the way I've talked about it in the past is like being around men for me was always like really easy. It's chill, it's fun, it's laid back, there's no drama. Like it's a very common story actually that I hear from a lot of women. And as you read that, I'm like, oh my God. Not just to well, two things. One, to experience ourselves in this way that you're speaking to, of like that holy cadence that we are, um, as like the bride of Christ. And then also to be surrounded by other women who get it. It's been a bit of a whirlwind for me. Anyways, I say that to say I have a lot of respect and reverence and honor for your willingness to go deep into that. And I want to like set the floor for you to share what might have hold you in that direction of desire, of like wanting to know more, not just, I was about to say more about, but not more about. It's not what it is about to be a woman, because it doesn't really matter what we read until we like actually know it. But what pulled you into, I got to know this for myself?
Hmm. Such a good and big question. And, part of other people that I don't get to peek behind the veil of our friendship, part of what's really drawn me to you and what I've learned about you is that we share that similarity around, like, it was so much easier for me to hang out with the boys. Like, I was the guy's girl. And that was part of, my own personal, like, I loved and adored my father and wanted to learn from him. And part of, I was raised in a family, like a very athletic family too. I had two very athletic parents, which was such a gift. And at the same time, because I was never really taught the language of my body, but yet could feel the dysfunction that was happening in my internal system, which were just adaptation strategies, that I also was always seeking deeper information because I was never satisfied. There was like a hunger for more, which, played out in lots of different dysfunctional patterns. I was a woman who, was in a relationship with bulimia for 16 years of my life. Always had, from the time that I had begun having menstrual cycles. They never felt right, whatever that means. But from my experience of them, I was having hemorrhage level of blood loss. And I was so afraid to exist inside of my body for a whole multitude of reasons. And we could take this as far back as, like, I experienced meningitis at 6 months old, and like whatever sort of, energetic attachment that was inside of my system from that point in time that may or may not have contributed to the way that I existed. It's just, there were so many times in my youth and even in high school where I vividly remember just suddenly dropping into my body and then looking around and going, like, feels like everybody else is, like, I don't know where I just was or what was happening. And that hunger to not feel that way anymore, to feel like, it always felt as though everybody else was handed a guidebook and rule book on how to do life, and I was the only one that wasn't. And I just couldn't be inside of my body. It was so wildly uncomfortable. And then it felt like no one would listen to me either. Like, most of the medical system would either look at tests and go, well, this thing is off. You might have X, Y, and Z. And I was given a laundry list of dis-ease pathologies, and including rheumatoid arthritis. They thought that I had leukemia at one point in time. I mean, like, the list goes on. And the only two options I was ever given were pharmaceuticals that to be on for the rest of my life, or really invasive surgeries, nothing else. And what ended up happening through that entire process is I experienced my first miscarriage when I was 22 years old. And from there, so much more dysfunction from a menstrual cycle level. at the age of 24, when I just was bleeding out. I was bleeding out in every way, shape, and form. And mind you, it wasn't just like on a physical body level. I was also bleeding out in every aspect of my life. But from just that standpoint, I was offered a hysterectomy for the first time at 24 years old.
Wow.
And then also told that I had endometriosis to such a degree, or this was 25, endometriosis to such a degree that I would never be able to conceive.
Wow.
And then told like I could go on birth control or have a hysterectomy. And I was like, no. And in the years previous to this too, I had a lot of run-ins with the allopathic medical system who kept telling me that I was just depressed. And at least I had enough, there was this part of my soul that was always willing to like go toe to toe and go like, that's not a good enough reason. There's more happening here. And so either way, 2 months later after that, I ended up pregnant with my now son, Grayson, which was like such a miracle and blessing. And that moment in time, shifted so much of my reality too. And that calling into becoming a mother led me down a greater path of remembrance, of what it meant to be a woman. And that started to open, like the veil started lifting during my pregnancy too, where I started looking into deeper information through The Business of Being Born, Ricky Lake's documentary. And they talk a lot about just the Western medical system and like the mass consumerism of birth. And I started to feel that part of me come alive, like the woman who was like, no, this isn't the way that I'm supposed to do it. But I had never known another way.
Right.
And I was really fortunate that that part of me remembered and kept guiding me forward. And that thread, that like pulling forward, which I've come to experience and be in relationship with, that just, it feels like the hand of God pulling you to the next point and to the next point all along, ended up, through being a mother, I was still bulimic during that time period too. And then started to have a child mirrored to me, though he had never seen it, like the physical expression of bulimia. Like he would start like mimicking puking. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is startling. And I knew that I needed to change that, as well as, I don't think you and I have ever talked about it, but Grayson was really sick when he was very little. And I could watch as I got healthier and did certain things that he would get healthier too. And so I started to really begin to understand at the level that I could then, energetics between mother and child. And then that catapulted me forward. I mean, 2019 was like my rock bottom year. At the beginning of the year, I found out that they gave me a diagnosis of cervical cancer. And then I was very generously led right smack into my very big rock bottom, like through like substance abuse and everything else. And I think it was 3 years prior, just about, is when I had started the journey to stop being bulimic. And like, to kind of jump around just slightly, but I was also offered a hysterectomy for the second time during that process too. So there was like so much invasive surgery or, not a lot of solutions provided. There was there was like this one or this one, and neither choice seemed right. And so I kept looking for another until I just co-created so much chaos within my internal system that a third option ended up being presented by way of lots of healing modalities that I was walked into. One of the greatest gifts that happened during the time of COVID, because like we're 2019 end of 2019 hit ultimate rock bottom. I start walking into recovery during that time period. Then the beginning of 2020, world shuts down and everybody is online. And I I know I have a God that loves me a lot because I I started, it was near the end of that year that I had started working with different coaches too of 2019. And from that started to learn about like menstrual cups and like discs and all of these things that I had never had, I didn't know existed as an option. And it was actually, it initially started as a way to save money.
Mhm.
That I started to like try to find a different option. So I wasn't investing so much in tampons or pads every month because I was losing a pint of blood a day when I would bleed. So I was going through like massive amounts of products. And somehow in the grand way that God works, it was May of 2020, April, May of 2020, that Kylie Macbeth was doing an interview with a woman, Jasmine Rose, and she spoke this language about the menstrual cycle in this body, whereas like, I don't know what she's saying, but there is something here. And so I walked into her program and my life was forever changed because up until that point, I had no idea what estrogen actually was. I didn't know the word progesterone. I had no idea what a follicular phase was. I had no idea what a luteal phase was. I couldn't tell you if I was ovulating or not. I mean, like I had zero relationship with my body.
Mm.
And there was a lot of shame associated with that. And it opened this door, like this Pandora's box of life that I could never return from. Like now that I knew, it was like I was from that moment forever changed. And that for the last 4 years has led me on a deeper journey of coming to understand my body, learning the language of the basal body temperature, my cervical mucus, what it means to actually touch your cervix and what even that tells you, as well as like the energetic tone of creation that runs through us as women. And like who I am now on this other side is someone so much different than who I was 4.5 years ago.
Hmm. It's so interesting because obviously we didn't know each other at that time, but like the wild ways of which our paths were aligning, even though we didn't. Because I totally remember starting to use a cup for the same reason of being like, wait, I don't have to buy a box of tampons all the time. I'm like, this is great. And that didn't, I don't have the realm of experience that you did as like a catapulting of desire towards that deeper understanding, like that gift that you were offered in that way. But I can relate to many pieces of the like not wanting to be dropped into my body. Like that is the most terrifying thing in the world. And there was something you were saying about, okay, yeah, and in that regard of like not being dropped into your body and like having moments where you would be dropped in and being like, wait a minute, where am I? And it's so interesting. So as you're speaking about this and what I'm even just resonating within myself, and I think I'm assuming here, but my guess is that for a good majority of people who are a part of both of our worlds, they can relate to the sense of, well, either one, they grew up in a family who kind of like got this and taught it to them, or like us, they weren't. And I actually think this is true for men and women, not for men in the sense of like the cycle part, but for men and the desire and women in the desire portion of like, wait a minute, you're only giving me two options and there is no C, D, E, F, like, hold on, like something ain't adding up here. And it's for the people who are willing enough to say like, wait a minute, this is somehow normal for most people that at 24 years old, you're telling me one of my only options is a hysterectomy. Like, we're just going to cut it off at having kids. And like, God forbid, then you end up with Grayson. Holy moly. Like, it's the willingness to be handed that option and being like, oh, no, thank you. Like, there's got to be something else, even if we don't know what the third or fourth or fifth option is. And that's like the beauty of this. Like obviously you and I we would teach our kids the things we've so brilliantly learned. But to have that gift of curiosity in the face of adversity, where it's like that shit you are going through is not easy. Like, I can only imagine being in a lot of those moments you spoke to. It's like, I mean, a hysterectomy actually kind of sounds like an easy option to close the door on the pain and like the discomfort and like what's the word I'm looking for? It's not, oh gosh.
Convenient is really what.
Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to come up with. It's not convenient. Being a woman is not convenient. Like our cycles are so inconvenient. When I'm on like day 27 and I'm like, okay, I can't do anything. I need to lay down. It's like, but like, meanwhile, we had plans to do something that day. It's just not freaking convenient. And I have to tell you, I've only come upon most of this stuff like in the past year. Um, I really am just amazed at the ways we've trained ourselves as a society and as a people to create convenience over truth and to create comfort over, and I don't mean like comfort for the body. I just mean like comfort in the room over like, wait a minute, what's actually going on here? And this goes beyond just the human body. It is the human body and it's the spiritual realm. And so I think this is why I'm so intrigued by this from you, Parris, is you didn't just wake up one day and were like, I want to learn about the luteal and the follicular and the ovulatory. You like went deep in there and you're like, I'm not gonna take this option as the only one. So I have a lot of reverence for that.
Yeah, I've heard it spoken to as it's referred to as the gift of desperation. And I love the word of like curiosity in there as well, because like my curiosity has led me to such fruitful places, a lot of dangerous places, and a lot
Yeah, totally. It's great that you can see it that way though, and be able to rewrite the story, right? Because I don't want to get too off topic here, but I actually would say a big part of like the feminine provision is to be able to look back on our life. And you actually spoke to the part of shame and say, a lot of this was dangerous, but it was also a gift because without it, I probably wouldn't have had enough curiosity to go there.
Yes. And when we look at this too, like this is such a good place to like really drop in even deeper, is like when we look at biologically like how a woman is designed, like we are designed with a cervix that is round. It is the gatekeeper to the other side, to the spiritual realm. And every woman that is born into this world has the opportunity of rewriting legacy, literally from a gene transcription point, first and foremost. Like our epigenetic dialogue and literal like writing out, because if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to recall right now, but I'm fairly certain it's the ribosomes that help with gene transcription. And I don't know if you have ever heard this. You might find this fascinating from a like biblical allegory. Ribosome means rib. So they are supposed to be, the rib of Adam. They are like the
Mhm.
literal feminine essence inside of ourselves that are rewriting the DNA. And
Mhm.
and I think they do RNA. I don't know. Somebody can like fact check that all. There's a lot of
We love fact checkers around here, Paris. I'm definitely joking. But if
so
someone wants to fact check that, go for it. Anyways, keep going.
go ahead. I mean, at some point, I'd also trust that we'll all get over to the other side. And I can't wait for that powwow sit down where we're all like, can you believe that's what we thought was happening? Like that's
Oh, for
what we
sure.
thought
Yeah.
was occurring. But either way, we have that opportunity to rewrite our genetic makeup as women too. And we do have that like as a circle inside of our body because our cervix looks like a donut and it's so cute. And if you haven't had an opportunity yet as a woman to look at your own cervix, it is a humbling experience too, to be like, that is the portal to heaven. And
Mm.
but we get to go back and amend. We are literally mending the past. And the more that we are willing to turn towards those big, hungry ghosts of the psyche that I wrote about, like in that poem, that is how we clean up the shame monsters and the guilt and like just from the women who came before who also couldn't do this deeper level of work or it was incomplete. And we get to
Right.
come along and go, I can change this.
Yeah.
Because like you named too, Courtney, like we are the bread. We are the bread, we are the body, we are the bride. And we as women, like this is my favorite thing about women, that we feel everything first. And though the story, like our bodies can sense what's happening, that's part of how we were designed to be too, as
Mhm.
the forebears of life into the world. And our responsibility is to help steward that life forward until they reach that maturation point where they go off either on their hero's journey or the women stay behind and then learn from us from a different level, right? Like when they
Mhm.
walk into Minarch. But there's so much deep history woven into it that like as I have remembered more and more about the responsibility of being a woman with a menstrual cycle, I can feel I can feel my maternal line even deeper and the paternal line too, and then understand the gift that I'm being offered to
Mhm.
clean up the past and not need to close the door on it.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, I love it. It's like an ancestral healing as well by not necessarily, I don't really see it as like a soul being educated, but like living and becoming um that woman that we wished we had there for us when we were young. Um, so it's coming to me as I was, so in the beginning when I was like giving your intro and I'm like, how did me and Paris even get connected? As you're speaking, I'm remembering like, a big part of how you and I got connected was by existing in the spaces of the feminine and masculine, beautiful teachings online, but both of us having a desire for Christ in that. And so I say that because it's no shock to me that you can also correlate this spiritually, which I think is maybe to me, like it's of great importance that and you haven't even spoken much on like the physicalities of this, like being a woman and our awareness and knowledge, but like then going from there and having like a full, it's not just like a one-time spiritual experience, but like a life of being connected to God. And so I'm curious, in both parts, like has deepening your connection to the body, deepened your connection to God, and vice versa?
Oh yeah. I mean, oh gosh, it's such a big question. And I always feel a little crazy going into. So we have a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening, not an intellectual awakening. And the
Mhm.
only way that we can have that spiritual awakening is being fully in our body, which is where the way I experience it. And there's so many ways that this is described throughout the world, that like golden thread of truth with a capital T that can't be like unwritten or unseen. And the fact, for me, the fact of the matter is God is that all-knowing energy that exists everywhere at any point in time. And that thumbprint of identity of the I am that exists, I have always found from the time that I was little in the body when I had no relationship to God. I mean, God was this external concept, right? It was the thing that I tried to intellectualize over and over and over again.
Mm.
Then there came a point too where a lot of what I was doing was trying to just I would pendulum swing. It was either I would feel everything so much that I would exist solely in theory of God and be like, oh, I get that. It's God. Like I can feel all of that. It's just ultimate love. Or I would over intellectualize it all to try to figure it out. But just to keep God at an arm's distance, because the sensation of holding God in my body as a holy daughter with that level of love flowing and pumping through my body was too much sensation to handle.
Mm. Mhm.
And so actually being willing to sit at the feet of my body and be in relationship with it. Oh, I was going to bring this up earlier. I heard today somebody said that compliance isn't relationship. And a lot of the way in which I existed inside of my body was from a level of compliance. I need you to do what I need you to do because the way that you want to act is out of my realm of preference.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that wasn't how I was designed to be. I am consistently inconsistent. I am a different human every single day because I run on a hormone cycle that lasts 28 to 30 days, depending on what all is happening. And so being willing to sit at the feet of my body and then get inside of my body and learn its love language.
Mhm.
Learn the way that it speaks. To me, it's like speaking in tongues, right? Like that I'm willing to sit and go, oh, that's what that means.
Mm.
That then I can begin to understand how to do things differently because I have a map that doesn't make me a victim also because I think I've been thinking about this on pondering, mulling over, feeling into like what I heard from an astrologer once that the reason why astrology exists is so that we'll learn patterns so we can make different choices. And I feel as though that's the same relationship we can come into if we learn the heavens, like the cycles of heaven that exist inside of our body as a woman, that is very
Mhm.
different than the way that our world is structured too, which is in a very masculine sense. And in learning that how to be dynamic, like it is quite a posture to hold. Like that I also simultaneously within a 24-hour cycle experience my entire menstrual cycle. Like it's like all of these concentric circles inside of concentric circles inside of concentric circles. And to me, it's like, it's art and it's beautiful. And it's brought me in deeper relationship with my body and the ability to resolve ongoing conflicts. Like I don't bleed like I used to. In fact, I mean, it's so hard to really share and get across to people who I am now, because so few, like there's many people in my world that exist, like including you, who didn't know that version of me in 2019, who and also like the people who never saw the pain of a woman who walked through cancer not in the allopathic world, right? Because there's not a lot of other options given. And no matter what somebody feels about like what cancer is, I mean, it is a response to cellular chaos. And I chose through my gift of desperation and like lots of other things, to walk a different path than outside of the allopathic system. And it wasn't convenient. It wasn't convenient at all. And there were lots of moments where I was so exhausted that all I could do was be in bed. And trying to mother through that season was a lot. And yesterday I have to go play football with my son. And even just a year and a half ago, I used to be so exhausted from us playing. Like it was so hard to like look at my son who wanted to just play tag with me. And I couldn't run. And I had been a college athlete, right? Like that goes back to that, like I had no relationship with my body. I abused my body. I like took from my body as much as possible. I made it comply and do what I wanted it to do, because I didn't know anything different.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like that could be its own longer discussion itself that I might actually even want to go deeper into with you at some point, because it's something that you and I get to briefly touch on in our chats. We never go super deep. I haven't talked about it on a long time in any of the platforms, but I just to be able to reflect back and think about like what we entrained ourselves to and how transformative it has been to release those patterns and like to witness like a new revival happening in your system, to be able to be that mother who can play with your children. I'm not a mother yet, but I can only imagine like that gratification that comes to go through that evolution is huge. But I can relate on the end of abusing the body, getting it to do what I want. And you were saying something earlier about, you know, how like the way our bodies run in the cycle, like we're reflecting nature and how the world operates like in a more, I think you said masculine, and I would even just see it as like, it's just like linear. It's like deadlines and it's plans and it's certainty, and it's not even actually structure. It's more like ridicule. Because when we really know that we're that like half of the whole, and we, you know, at a deeper level, we are the whole, but we're that half of the whole in the physical sense of being a woman, we no longer have to comply with that way of being, and we can honor that way of which we're ever evolving. And oh my gosh, there's a lot of deeper pieces that I want to touch on. So I'm feeling like we may have to have a part 2 of this discussion, because we're going to have to wrap up in a moment.
I do,
Yeah.
because there's so many parts that we can go into
Yeah,
right now.
there really are. And I didn't think about it, you know, because I don't plan for these things, but like sitting in the juiciness of this, I'm like, oh wow. There are really such beautiful provisionary places to touch that we've just like grasped on here. And I want to set the floor for the classes that you're hosting here. Well, not here. I want to set the floor here for the classes that you're hosting for In Sync. When is your next one?
It will be this Friday.
Oh, I didn't even realize it was this week. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if this will get uploaded by then.
That's okay.
So,
It is gonna be, it's something that I am turning into during this current season, an ongoing, hopefully monthly like offering. So people will have
cool.
opportunities to come and learn. But the point of it is to begin to learn some of the deeper energetic signature, like the chemical, the structural, and the emotional like parts of what's happening in the framework around the menstrual cycle. It's a very, it's like an appetizer and a amuse bouche of like, here's a little bite size. But it feels really important to name also because I exist in a lot of places where women feel really comfortable going to the big spiritual theories of things, but actually dropping down into our body and understanding like, okay, what's the practical application of this? How can I utilize this information to refine my level of devotion to my body, to myself, and then thus to everything else around me. And that to me was like part of like, you know, your conversation around like linear and like, you know, the world can really weaponize discipline, which is a really gift to be able to be in relationship with as like judgment and like making things wrong. So it's like, come and like allow the gold to be pulled out of you. And so anyways,
yeah, those are going to have to be deeper parts of a future discussion because I think they are really important. But I want to say just really quickly, because I had a preview of the first class that you did, is that as someone who also like held the like deeper craving of how to honor our bodies in this way, it is so incredibly useful for like anyone where they are on their journey, even if you feel like you have no idea what we were talking about, or if you're someone who's been versed in this for some time. Even just for me, like having dabbled in and out, but like some of it was like having refreshers, some of it was brand new, like eye-opening. But I think all of it is incredibly useful to our day-to-day life and incredibly useful to like honoring our lineage, our legacy, as a woman. So I wanted to speak to that as someone who had got to sit in for a bit, which I'm so grateful for. The way of teaching that you've offered is very easy to integrate, very easy to integrate. So I wanted to say that.
thank you, Courtney, for that reflection.
Yeah.
It's such a gift to be able to share this all with the world, especially as I continue to learn and be a student. And it is this is a framework for women, no matter where they are from that spectrum of menarche to motherhood, and then even into menopause, because that, you know, we women are always energetically attuned to the deeper cycles, to the deeper thing, and coming to learn this language from a 24-hour period of time to a 28 to 30-day cycle can be really beneficial and helpful no matter where you are in that journey.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. Well, thank you, Paris. We'll leave. I guess I don't know if you'll have like an ongoing link, but we can figure that out, how to get people connected for whenever the next one may be. So I'll make sure that's included somewhere. And thank you so much for gifting us with this. This was such a treat. And yeah, hopefully more to come. And the other thing I'll say is I'll leave places to find you. I would say like Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
School of the Sacred.
Mm.
A lot of the teaching stuff will be like under that umbrella, and then people can find me on Instagram at Paris with 5 underscores because I'm waiting for my husband to come along.
Love it. Yeah, we'll leave the link. So people can just click. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you all for being here and for joining in. Let us know what you received today in our time together. We would love to hear. And if you might have any questions for a future conversation that Parris and I may have together. Lots of love.